A little boy walked up to a broken Rolls-Royce on a busy street. And what he did next made grown men in expensive suits go completely silent. Nobody called him. Nobody asked him. He just walked over, looked under the hood, and got to work. And the men standing around that car, the ones who owned it, had no idea what was about to happen. This is the story of a 10-year-old boy who did something that most trained mechanics couldn't figure out, and the moment it happened, everything changed, not just for him, but for everyone watching. Stay with me, because this story has a twist that nobody saw coming. Let's set the scene. It's a regular afternoon in the middle of a busy city street. Traffic is moving, people are walking, life is doing what life does. And then, right in the middle of all of it, a Rolls-Royce breaks down. Now, if you don't know what a Rolls-Royce is, here's a quick picture. We're talking about one of the most expensive cars on the planet. The cheapest one starts at around $350,000. Some of them cost over $1 million. These are not regular cars. These are machines that rich people buy to show the world they've made it. So when this Rolls-Royce stopped working right there on the street, the men standing around it were not happy. They were wearing sharp suits. They looked important. They had the kind of energy that says, "I don't have time for this." There were about 4 or 5 of them, all standing around the car with their arms crossed, phones in hand, waiting for someone to come fix it. And then, out of nowhere, this little boy walks up. He's 10 years old, small, wearing regular clothes. Not a uniform, not a badge, nothing official. Just a kid. He doesn't ask for permission. He doesn't say anything fancy. He just walks straight to the front of the car, looks at the engine, and starts checking things. The men look at each other. Some of them look annoyed. One of them probably thought, "What is this kid doing?" But the boy doesn't stop. He keeps going. And within a few minutes, he finds the problem. Here's where things get really interesting. The issue with the car was something that even the adults standing around couldn't figure out. It wasn't something obvious. It wasn't a flat tire or an empty gas tank. It was a mechanical problem hidden deep inside the engine. The kind of thing you only know about if you've spent a lot of time actually learning how engines work. And this boy knew exactly what it was. Now, you might be wondering, how does a 10-year-old kid know this stuff? And this is where the story gets really deep. This boy's name was Marcus. And Marcus didn't come from money. Not even close. He grew up in a small house with his mom, who worked 2 jobs just to keep food on the table. They didn't have a car. They definitely didn't have a Rolls-Royce. What Marcus had was a grandfather, a retired mechanic, who spent every evening teaching Marcus everything he knew about engines. From the age of 6, Marcus was in his grandfather's small garage, watching, learning, asking questions. By the time he was 8, he could take apart a basic engine and put it back together. By 10, he had absorbed years of real mechanical knowledge, just from sitting next to someone who truly loved what they did. Studies actually show that children who learn hands-on skills between the ages of 6 and 12 retain that information far longer and far more deeply than adults who learn the same skills later in life. The brain at that age is literally built for absorbing new information like a sponge. Marcus wasn't special because of luck. He was special because someone took the time to teach him, and he paid attention. So there he was, crouched in front of $1 million car, doing what his grandfather had taught him to do. Just look, think, and solve the problem. He fixed it. In about 8 minutes, Marcus figured out what was wrong, made a temporary fix that was good enough to get the car moving again, and stood up. He wiped his hands on his jeans and looked at the men around him. The silence that followed was the loudest moment of the whole story. These men, who probably had drivers, assistants, and entire teams of people working for them, had just been shown up by a 10-year-old kid on the side of the road, and not in an embarrassing way, in an unforgettable way. One of the men, the one who owned the car, walked over to Marcus. He didn't say much at first. He just looked at the boy for a second, and then he asked one question. "Who taught you how to do that?" Marcus told him about his grandfather, about the garage, about the evenings spent learning, about how his grandfather always said, "A man who can fix things will never go hungry." That sentence hit different, coming from a 10-year-old kid, standing next to a Rolls-Royce he just repaired. The man who owned the car was not just some random rich guy. He ran a large automotive company. He had engineers, mechanics, and experts on his payroll. And in that moment, standing on that street, he made a decision. He pulled out a card and handed it to Marcus. He told him that when he was old enough, there was a place for him at his company. And then, because he wasn't the kind of man who lets a moment like that pass without doing something real, he asked Marcus where he lived. Long story short, that man funded Marcus's education. Not just a little bit, full coverage. The best schools, the best technical training, the works. He also made sure Marcus's grandfather got proper recognition, because that old mechanic in a small garage had quietly produced one of the most impressive young problem solvers that man had ever seen. And this isn't just a feel-good story. This is a real reminder of something we forget all the time. We live in a world that is obsessed with titles, degrees, and job positions. We assume that knowledge comes from expensive schools or fancy backgrounds. We look at a 10-year-old and think, what could he possibly know? But knowledge doesn't care how old you are. Skills don't check your bank account. And talent has absolutely no interest in where you grew up. A Harvard Business Review study found that practical, hands-on problem solving is one of the most valued and rare skills in the modern workplace, and yet it's one of the least taught in traditional education. Meanwhile, a kid in a small garage with an old mechanic was quietly building exactly that skill, one evening at a time. The men in those expensive suits had money, status, and resources. But in that moment, on that street, none of that could fix the car. A 10-year-old with real knowledge and real hands-on experience could. That's the part that sticks. And here's the other thing this story teaches us about the men in those suits, specifically the one who stopped and actually paid attention. It would have been very easy for him to dismiss Marcus, to wave him off, to say, "Step back, kid." A lot of people would have done exactly that. But he didn't. He watched. He gave the boy space to work. And when the boy delivered, he recognized it immediately. That kind of humility, the ability to be surprised, to admit that you don't know everything, to look at a 10-year-old and say, "Okay, show me what you've got." That is actually a rare quality in successful people. And it's one of the main reasons some people keep growing while others stay stuck. You never know where the lesson is going to come from. Sometimes it comes from a professor, sometimes it comes from a book, and sometimes it comes from a little boy crouched in front of your rolls. Royce on a random Tuesday afternoon. Marcus's story didn't make global headlines. It didn't go viral in the traditional sense. But it spread the way real stories spread, person to person, because it hit something true. We all want to believe that hard work matters, that what you know matters more than what you have, that a kid with nothing but skill and a good teacher can walk into any room, or in this case, any broken down car, and change the entire atmosphere. And the truth is that belief isn't naive. It's backed by real life, real moments, and real people like Marcus who prove it over and over again. His grandfather used to say, "A man who can fix things will never go hungry."